Okay, well, I am here. Oh gosh, I am here with Erick. Erick is a friend of mine from the 956, the South Texas region. And yeah, I've known Erick since probably 2014, so 10 years now. I've known Erick for
Yeah,
about 10 years now. And yeah, I thought I'd have him
sounds
on the
about right.
podcast. He is a Dallas seminary student currently and is graduating this semester. So that's pretty exciting, but I'll let him tell you all the things about himself. So Erick, maybe you could just start off by giving us a little bit of your life story, your spiritual journey a little bit, maybe some of your hobbies, what Erick does for fun, and just stuff like that, your bio.
Um, well, my name is Eric from South Texas. If you don't, Mission, Texas. If anybody who's listening doesn't know where that is, it's probably more south than you think. Not San Antonio. San Antonio is not South Texas. Um, I'm a student at Dallas Seminary, and this is my last semester. I'm looking forward to graduating. Looking forward to never having to write a paper again in my life, probably.
Yeah.
Um, Victor maybe thought that at one point. Now he's in a doctoral program.
Well, also
Um,
you're in the Presbyterian Church right now, so I'm sure the ordination for the Presbyterian Church requires a fairly lengthy paper, but I don't know if that's true
sure,
or
yeah,
not. You'd be more
uh,
equipped to tell me, but
yeah. It's a long, yeah. It is. You do got to write a lot of papers and stuff. Dang. Well, it's a lot to think about there.
hey, but you'll be
Um,
prepared because you have all of your DTS papers, you know? So
oh yeah, but I mean, a lot of them are not theologically aligned.
yeah, that's
Well, not
true.
all of them, but some of them I'll have to go in there and make some edits if I choose to
That's true.
change my mind or not.
Yeah. I'm on a council for a guy, and I'm reading his ordination paper right now, and I'm meeting with him. Me and a
Oh,
counselor are meeting with him next week, and we're just gonna grill him and ask him questions. And you said
mhm.
this in your paper. What did you mean by that? So it's fun to get to read somebody else's stuff. But anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be helpful, Victor, if you could guide me through a bio introduction. When you ask someone, "Tell me about yourself," and then you realize, "Oh, there's nothing about me."
Yeah, well,
There is. So
no,
help
tell
me get
me,
there.
tell me about your upbringing, your family, brothers, sisters, mother,
Okay.
father, their religious background, maybe some of your religious background.
Yeah. I'm a middle child, two older brothers, a younger brother and sister who are twins. Um, I don't, I, being a middle child, I didn't get the middle child experience from my parents, but I got it from probably my siblings and everybody else around me. Um, if you ask any of my siblings growing up, and maybe even now, if you ask our mom who her favorite is, she would probably say it's me, and I probably would agree with that. Definitely did seem like that growing up, um, but growing up like that, growing up, also being a runt, all my siblings are all bigger than me. They're like bears. Um, I often got in a lot of fights. Ones that I started because I was very emotional. I guess still am, but as 25 years old, you just learn how to handle those things. But when you're a little kid, you're just an emotional fire hydrant, just letting loose. Um, I would lose all the fights I got in, and then I would cry for justice to my parents, and then I would get spanked. My brother would get spanked, and a lot of times when I was younger, I felt like I was the one who was being wronged. I was the one who was getting mistreated. I was the one who was wronged whenever spankings came along where people got in trouble. Um, so a lot of times growing up, feeling that way, I would, what is it? I don't know. I feel like alongside all of that, our parents were taking us to CCD. I'm not sure what it stands for. It's something within the Catholic Church, maybe other traditions as well. I think it's Christian something discipleship is what it stands for. It's pretty much where you, at a young age, I think at fourth grade is when you start going, um, and you go and learn how to be a member of the Catholic Church. And my parents put all of my siblings and I through that when we were younger, and because of that, I had a sense of there being a God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, God the Father, a very loose um, kind of sense of spirituality, and in all the things I went through as a little kid, those things were always in the back of my mind. Um, through all the emotions and all the fear I felt, um, I knew I'm a little kid. I didn't know this, but I guess inherently I knew I'm a little kid. I'm supposed to be taken care of. So I guess I'm being taken care of, or I'm going to be taken care of. So it's all right, I guess.
Mm.
I remember one time whenever people would talk about 2012 being the end of the world, that was a big thing before the year 2012. After that, it was kind of like, oh, well, like they made a big movie about it, and there was a lot of rhetoric on the History Channel, Ancient Aliens, and I was hooked on all that, and I was terrified. I was really scared, and I don't know why I kept watching. I was just morbidly curious and just scaring myself over and over and over. And as the year grew closer, I was more fearful
Mm.
because I was like, "Oh man!" Yeah. And I believed it was 8 years old. I thought the world was going to end in a few years, and that was really scary. I remember, and I remember praying. The only few times I would ever pray in my life, I don't know, middle school and below, was, Lord, could the world not end? um, and well, it didn't, so that was nice. Um, but all that came from a loose spirituality that wasn't practiced that much in my family. Or my parents were Catholic in a more cultural sense. It's a very Mexican thing to be spiritual in that way. Um, and my parents did their best to raise my siblings and I in the way that they thought was best, which was being a part of the Catholic Church in whatever way that looked like, which for us didn't really look like we really were. Um, we didn't go really that much on Sundays. The most consistent thing we did was go to CCD classes. Especially me, my siblings, they were able to kind of get around having to go. None of us really liked going. And Wednesday evenings, I'd rather stay home, play Pokemon on my DS than go sit in a class full of other kids my age I don't know for an hour and a half talking about God, which made us all uncomfortable for some reason. I think it made us all uncomfortable because we were all guilty. We all felt guilty because we weren't. None of us wanted to be there. We weren't giving our best to Ed, so we were all uncomfortable because we were like, oh, like, you know. Um, but I was, I was, I mean, maybe not my siblings either, but I mean, I'm not sure about them, but I kind of felt like, I don't know, like I was doing something right, doing something good by going. I was showing respect to God by going and kind of doing my best to take him seriously. Um, but the memories I have from there, for going there for years, were, I think it was pretty much just a training to be a good Catholic, to be pretty much just preparing you to be a member of the church officially. You would have your first communion. You would be baptized in the church, hopefully before that, ideally as a child, I guess, but you could be baptized in church at any point. I did it as a baby. So I had that first thing checked off. I would go and do my first communion, and then they would give us very loose theology, if any. And a huge focus was us memorizing some prayers, some creeds. One I remember is that one Hail Mary full of grace. Maybe that's all I remember. I remember memorizing the Lord's Prayer and memorizing some other affirmations of faith. I think we may have even memorized the Apostles' Creed, which
Wow.
I wish I could have kept that one. That that one would have been really cool to actually remember. But then I would go and test for them to see if I was on track to being a good Catholic. I would go and sit with one of the nuns or sisters, and recite all the things that I've been learning. And none of that, none of from what I remember, maybe it was there. I just probably wasn't paying attention because no one really wanted to be there. But there was no emphasis on knowing Jesus as Lord and Savior. And I know it's not really a Catholic thing to know Him as like your personal Savior kind of thing, more of just a corporate church kind of one. But I don't think I really heard that either. I'm not sure if anybody there understood that you don't like being good doesn't get you into heaven kind of thing. I think that was all of our understanding there. No one really explained it to us otherwise. We didn't have a good grasp on what the gospel was. We were just being taught what it took to be a member of the church on paper, which I guess makes sense in a Catholic framework where if you're a member of the church, that means you're saved, that means you're good, you're part of the body, but being a member of the church takes other things and not just being okayed by the local priest for it. So all that happened, and up until the confirmation part of that, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 year journey where you would go before the priest and confirm your Catholic faith. That is when you are officially a member of the church and you can do all church things. Maybe like a year or two before that, I started going to another church behind my parents' back who were not Christian. And it was there where I heard what the gospel was, but it didn't really stick with me. I didn't know what that was. I was like, oh, I know all this. I've been in CCD all my life. I'm not a rookie kind of thing here. And I don't know what it was, but just one day the Holy Spirit was calling me. I don't remember what it looked like. I don't remember what it felt like. I don't remember what words were being said. I don't remember what day. I wish I could know what day it was. But I know that at some point in the summer of 2015-ish, I committed myself to Jesus, accepted Him as Lord, and was like, okay, this is a new life I'm going to live now. This is going to be different. And I didn't know what that would look like or mean. I just knew that I think I made a big decision. I feel like I should do things differently now. And I remember I was taking some summer classes to get ahead in school, and being a little high schooler, 15, 16-year-old, my eyes were wandering and I was looking at some of my female classmates, and I thought to myself, what am I doing? God, like, I'm supposed to be not doing this. What the heck? I thought I was different. I thought I was changed. And I was kind of very confused and frustrated because I thought I was not going to do stuff like that anymore. You know what I mean? But there I was, still doing the same things I was doing months prior to becoming a Christian. I don't know what that meant. I don't know why. I didn't know anything about that. I just knew the only difference was I was more aware of it, and I was conflicted on wanting to look at my classmates and being confused as to, if I'm a Christian now, why am I doing this? Yeah. Is that enough backstory? I guess. I don't know.
No,
I
that's
kind of went
perfect. That's
off.
perfect. I was also a CCD child. I don't know what it stands for either. Probably something having to do
I
with
looked it up one
catechism.
time.
Catechism of the
I,
Catholic Church or
I,
something.
I think it's Christian Catechism Discipleship. I think I looked it up one time, and that sounds right.
Okay. Well, either way, for anyone who doesn't really know, it's essentially just classes where they indoctrinate you in all things Catholic Church dogma and doctrine. So yeah, you learn all the prayers and all of that. And I went through that as well, and it was the worst thing of my life. Not because of anything that they did or anything dealing with the Catholic Church, but because when you're a child and you go to school Monday through Friday, and then you have to go to school again on Saturday to recite
Yeah.
prayers and sit in a pew. Actually, it was a whatever to sit in a chair. It's pretty depressing. And I have such a memory that I never really studied, because the prayers are like 20, 30-second prayers. They're really short. So just on the
Ooh,
drive
I
from home,
studied. I
you did?
studied.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
I
Yeah,
was
my mom
I
makes me
didn't study
study.
for school, much less for CCD. So I would just drive, and on the drive, I would just be reciting them with my mom there, back and forth, going to it, back and forth. The good thing about CCD for me, I don't know if they did this at your church. They gave us nachos, hot Cheetos and cheese, hot dogs every time we went. They just had a platter of
Hmm.
snacks. It wasn't free. We had to pay for it, but my mom would give me a
Oh,
bill, and everything was like 75
yeah.
cents, so it wasn't a big
Yeah,
deal.
we would do some. We would do something like that. It was free for us. Um, I remember one time. I think I only went to confession like 2 or 3 times ever, and I was so stressed out doing it my first time ever because I thought to myself, like, I have to go confess my sins. Okay, I'm like in 6th grade. What am I going to confess? I didn't listen to my mom when she told me to go let the dog out. But also, I was worried that I would forget a lot of sins that I have done.
Yeah.
I was scared. I remember one time just driving past a Burger King. I was looking out the window. That's why I remember the Burger King, and I was stressed. I was like, I'm going to forget some, and those sins will not be forgiven. How could I possibly remember every single sin I've committed? Like, I'm doomed. There's just nothing I could do. And then I thought to myself, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to go every single day and tell the priest about everything I did that day, so that way I could make sure that I am good and never miss a single one. I remember they taught us that how often should you go to confession, and they said every time you sin. So I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go every day. I guess I thought to myself that as a little kid, but I thought it was awkward to tell my mom that. It still is also awkward to talk anything kind of spiritual in my family.
Mhm.
So I would think, how could I tell my mom that I want to go to confession? This is weird. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what it was like.
Yeah. My,
Um,
my first confession. Here's the thing. I don't think I had an actual concept of what sin was. It was just the next thing in the order of CCD. You go through the classes, you do your confession, you do your first communion. It was just part of the order. So I went to the confession because I had to, and it was scheduled and planned, and all of my class went at the same day, and we kind of just took turns going in the room, out the room, in the room, out the room. And I had no concept of what sin really was. So when I showed up, I just told the priest I had one confession, and I said, kind of similar to what you said, just sometimes my mom tells me to brush my teeth and I don't do it. And I don't know why that's like a core memory in my brain, but it is. And that's when I told
yeah,
the priest, and he was like, okay, anything else? And I was like, I think that's it. And he was like, all right,
I'm sure he
I'll
gets
forgive
a
you of your
lot of that
sins.
from the children.
Get out of here. What was that?
Yeah, I'm sure he gets a lot of that from all the children going through who maybe don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, probably, probably. I listened to. I don't know if you've ever watched him. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Pints with Aquinas.
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's super fun. He's a Catholic, and he interviews a lot of Catholics, monks and professors, scholars, writers, just all sorts of different people. And he interviewed, I forgot who it was, but he was a priest, and he was asking him about confessions, and he's like, "What's it like to be in confessional? You hear all of these people's sins. Like, it must be pretty fun to hear those things, like exciting even." And the priest was like, "You'd think so, but it's kind of boring. Everybody has the same sins. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into confession and there's a man on the other side, and he's just like this. Oh man." Kind of getting ready to let it all out. And before the guy can speak, the priest is like, porn? It's porn, isn't it? And the guy on the other side is like, yeah. So
That's so
apparently they
funny.
hear the same things all day, every day. So
Yeah.
This is right or wrong, but apparently they get pretty bored after it. At least this guy did. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm sure it's the same with the kids. The same five things. I don't feed the dog. I don't brush my teeth. I say no too much.
Yeah.
But absolve me from my sins.
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah, that's kind of interesting that you say that the whole you were kind of always maybe I don't know what word to use, but kind of always scared or uncertain. You'd have to be in confessional all the time, and that's kind of I mean, obviously, there's a difference between Protestant and Catholics and Catholicism, but I feel like that's one of the great divides is that assurance. In Protestantism, we can know
Hmm.
if I mess up and I die, it's okay. The blood covers it, and it doesn't excuse my sin by any means, but I can have a certain kind of peace and assurance that the work that Jesus completed is good even for my future sins. But in Catholicism, because they view justification differently, it's not a one-time declaration like it is in Protestantism. It's a continual process. You are being justified,
Yeah.
and you're taking steps back in your justification and moving forward. And I'm not a Catholic
Hmm.
scholar, so if I butchered that explanation, I'm sorry, but that's the general idea. It's a process. It's not a declaration, and that can be a terrifying thing. And then you throw purgatory in there, like there are sins that you will pay for after death as you're being purged
Yeah.
that wickedness, and it is kind of a scary thing, and that's kind of the big divide that I see. And we disagree on popes, and we
Hmm.
disagree on the presence of Christ in communion and all sorts of things. But I feel like the major one in my brain, at least, is that assurance of salvation and that assurance of justification is a difficult
Hmm.
hump for me to get over. You know this, but a lot of
Yeah.
people who watch this don't. When I was an early Christian, because of my background in the Catholic Church, I hated the Catholic Church. I don't so much now, actually. I feel like I'm much more friendly than I've ever been to the Catholic Church. But anyways, at one point I really hated it, and I was like an anti-pope or something. Like it was my goal to destroy the Catholic Church, and I would share this with people. I don't believe this anymore, but at one time I was like, what if I infiltrated the Catholic Church and jumped in and became a deacon and then became like a bishop and then became like a cardinal, and eventually one day I would be the pope, and then as the pope I could speak from the chair and just like declare Catholicism heresy or something. And that was my goal. I felt like that was my Christian mission, was to destroy the Catholic Church from the inside out. But not anymore. So anyone watching, I've gotten over that. I've grown
Yeah.
from that. But at one point, that's how I felt towards the Catholic Church, and now I feel like I kind of like it. I listen to a lot of Catholic scholars and stuff like that. I read just stuff from
Yeah.
the Catholic
Yeah.
Church now, and it's very insightful and quite healthy actually. But
Yeah. I mean,
anyways,
they are our brothers and sisters.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you talked about being the runt and being scrawny and small and kind of the small one in your family. Tell us where you're at now with that.
Uh, 23.5% body fat,
Okay.
bulking, that's why. 193-ish pounds, 84 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
My bulk, this is the end of my bulk. It's a lot leaner, a lot more muscle mass, and a lot leaner than my last bulk.
Okay.
So I made progress there. My last bulk, I ended at like, I think 80 pounds of muscle at like 25 and a half body fat.
Yeah. So you've been
So
working out what, 2 years now?
ish, yeah, yeah. And really because my I for some reason decided to run a marathon like 2 or 3 years ago, and
I
I got
remember that.
really skinny then. Just running miles all day. By the way, I think a 10-mile distance run is the perfect amount. Anything more is too long. Anything shorter was too short. 10 miles was my favorite run.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I got really skinny, and my roommate at the time, who was like a personal trainer back in Miami, big dude, uh, in his prime, I like to say that he looked like Megatron just because how built he was. And he looked at me as I was washing the dishes, and a size small shirt. He described it as it was just hanging over my body when I wore it. And he was like,
Wow.
"Eric, we need to put some meat on you." And then I just started going to the gym with him, and it's really helpful when your roommate is a personal trainer who goes to the gym with you every day and
Yeah.
watches every meal you eat. So that's what I benefited greatly from his persistent guidance there. I like to say his last name is Montpremier, So I like to make jokes with some other friends, like, "Oh, I went to the school of Montpremier. He's Rabbi Montpremier.
Yeah.
I'm a disciple of the Montpremier lineage because, I mean, everything he taught me was really good stuff, and some other people kind of go for him for advice. So I like to say, like, I'm part of his lineage there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's something I enjoy doing. I don't know why, and I was talking to this with my roommate the other day. I don't know why I keep going. I don't have a long term goal. Like when I'm squatting or about to squat, especially there, I think to myself, why am I doing this? Because squatting sucks.
It's the
So
worst.
that's really when you have those thoughts of why am I doing this to myself? I don't know. I mean, I guess look better. I guess look healthier. Attract a girl. Those are all maybe more short term things. Long term, I don't know why I keep self improving, trying to self improve physically that way. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
just part of my routine now, and I enjoy having structure and routine, and it's also I like doing it too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I preached this past Wednesday. I preached on some biblical perspective on the body, talking about like just our embodied nature and how physical
Hmm.
exercise and good nutrition, fasting and feasting are all important aspects of what it means to be spiritual, and how there is a connection between exercise and good nutrition and our spiritual life, you know? And I just finished this book. It's by Greg Allison. It's called Embodied. It's super good. But he talks about good nutrition. Part of it talks about good nutrition and physical exercise. And he says that the goal slash purpose of physical exercise and good nutrition is to decrease mortality, the chances of you dying, increase health and
Hmm.
longevity so that you can enjoy the life that God has for you for as long as possible. And obviously, we don't have control over how long we live, but these are things that are in control. What we put on our plate, what form of exercise we do, and all of that, and how it is
Yeah,
actually a spiritual practice. So maybe that's part of the
yeah,
feeling that you're getting. You don't quite have a word for it, but you know that you as a person feel better, and there's something good there that happens, and that might just be part of it. But
yeah. I mean, one thing I do know that happens to me, which in some ways, well, the way that working out does impact my spiritual life is that when I am halfway through a workout or maybe ending it, I'm exhausted physically and mentally. My inhibitions are low. I'm less guarded. I'm able to connect closer to the Lord and be more honest with myself and with the Lord and be more vulnerable. And I found myself being in that place a lot on the drive back or at latter half of a workout once I'm mentally exhausted from working out. And that way, I can't put up the barriers up whenever I'm in prayer that I usually do. You know what I mean? I have noticed that in myself. So I sometimes do look forward to the end of my workout when I know I'm going to be more honest when
mhm.
I'm praying on the way back. And I've had a lot of good experiences there
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome, man. I'm happy for you. That's a that's an often overlooked aspect of spirituality and what it means to be healthy, holistically. Um, at least in the Christian sphere. Obviously, it's
Hmm.
very often leans towards pray more, read your Bible more, and you'll be good. Um, and sometimes pastors need to learn to ask, like, well, how's your diet? How's your sleep regimen? How often are you taking a rest day? Because those things are so vital.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
protein are you taking these days?
Uh, red meat.
Okay, you don't have a shake anymore?
I do. I just hate drinking protein shakes now.
I do too.
I get grossed out. Yeah.
Yep. I was
It
with
takes me
you
like
in the
10,
ISO
15
100.
minutes.
best protein ever. I loved it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you're
it's true.
drinking it every single day,
Yeah,
sometimes twice a day, depending on what you
twice a
do,
day. Yeah,
twice a day, oh, it
yeah,
gets so old. I asked because I'm drinking this right now. They sell them at Sam's. They're cheaper by the serving than ISO 100, and they have more protein. And it's just the little Fairlife milks. But
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're good.
it's
I
not the
mean,
elites, the ones that like are 26 grams and 42 grams. It's a different one. This one has 30 grams.
yeah,
But it's just a chocolate milk.
yeah,
It's like $1 and like 15 cents per one of these when you buy them in bulk at Sam's, and they're really yummy and
that's
delicious.
good.
And I just got so tired of ISO 100. Like,
Yeah, I
goodness
just got tired of
gracious.
any powder mix drink. It's
Yeah,
hard for me to get it down.
yeah,
It's gross. I get grossed out by it. So
yeah,
I just try to get it much protein in from meat. But that milk, there's no whey protein in there.
yeah.
It's
No,
just
it's just
I
high quality milk. It's
I
crazy.
yeah, I looked into it and I was like 42 gram ones. And my roommate were like, how could they fit 42 grams of protein into this bottle?
It's
It's just
crazy.
really high quality milk.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
it
know what's
tastes
in it.
amazing. It tastes so good. It doesn't taste
Yeah,
like protein. It just tastes like amazing vanilla or chocolate milk.
yeah,
So this is
yeah.
not sponsored by Fairlife, but if anyone from Fairlife watches this, sponsor me because I use your thing literally every single day. Anyways,
The other day I was looking at I'm preparing a sermon for a chapel I'm preaching at about kind of a loose. I mean, it's still working. I'm still working on what it's kind of going to be about and what it looks like, but a working kind of proposition I'm putting is it's about community, and I think what I'm going to preach on is something along the lines of how community points to an aspect of our eschatological hope, which includes community. So I guess something like that. And I was looking at Genesis because anytime you talk about anything end times, you got to go back to Genesis and looking for parts of where community existed in the garden. What kind of words are used and what would it look like for humanity and stuff like that. Um, I went to Daniel. You know what? I forgot where I was going with this. I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, I'm not even sure how it connects anymore. Oh
that's
yeah,
okay.
I found an article on the Bible Project talking about how we are our body's a temple, and it reminded me of that first sermon I ever preached
That's I was
at
just thinking
Emerge
about that. I was
about
gonna bring it up.
yeah, yeah.
Tell a story, Eric. Tell a story
And
because this is funny to me.
oh yeah, so the message I still have it, and I want to do it again. I'm going to tell my pastor if there's ever we have a one-off day, I want to preach this sermon, and I could do it so much better now. But I feel like it was still pretty good. But the message was that our body now, as a believer, our bodies are not our own. We're the temple, and there's a whole lot of imagery and reasons for why that is and all that. But when I preached this message to a bunch of high schoolers, some things I was saying was like, don't treat your body like it only belongs to you, like you're the only one in it, sort of thing, because the Holy Spirit is there with you. So consult your roommate with what you do with the body. And then I gave some practical examples like eat healthy or work out, do wiser things with your body. And what everybody heard at the end of the night was, oh, this was a sermon about being healthy. And I didn't realize that until like a month later, someone told me that. No, I think it was a week later. Someone sent me a video of someone doing like some jumping jacks saying, Eric said we need to be healthier. So I'm doing jumping jacks. And I thought to myself, that wasn't the point of the message. That's what everybody heard. The point of the message was pray about what you're going to do with your body because it's not yours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the Lord will be like, don't work out for some reason. That's possible too. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be. Yeah, yeah. But
It was funny because
that's what happened. That was
I was there for that first sermon you ever preached. Were you still in high school?
I think so, or
Yeah,
maybe
it's because you
college.
you said you
One of the
said
two.
I was preaching to a bunch of high schoolers, and I'm thinking you were a high schooler, and Anyways,
I
whatever.
probably
I think
was.
you were a senior. I don't think you were graduated yet. But anyways, doesn't matter. Yeah, you preached, hypothetically speaking, you preached 25 minutes. 23.5 minutes were just kind of a basic theology of what it means to be a believer and have the Spirit dwell in you and be the temple
It's
for
true.
Him.
It's
And then you spent
true.
maybe 30 seconds talking about eat well and be healthy in the gym. And then you spent another 30 seconds closing the sermon. But for some reason, all anyone in that room heard, it was so funny, was go to the gym, lift some weights, and eat a iceberg lettuce, and you'll be good. So it was funny. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that because, like I said, this past Wednesday, I preached or I taught a class on the body, and part of it was about eating healthy and having good physical regimen. Anyways, I purposely left that section to the very end, and I just glanced over it for like maybe a minute and a
Yeah.
half, and then I moved on from it completely because I didn't want people to get focused on
Hmm.
that because I remember what
Yeah.
happened to you. So,
Yeah.
so,
And
but hey, you're gonna preach it
people like
again.
hearing that.
Yeah, you're gonna preach
I
it
hope
again,
to.
and you got another chance.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite thing about that, which I was disappointed that no one really caught on, but maybe it's just biblical trivia, maybe. But my favorite thing about that when I was preparing for it was how Solomon's temple, how much Garden of Eden imagery there was in creating it.
Mm,
How there was so much wood. Like when you read in First Kings, how it was built, the measurements and what was used. There was a lot of different kinds of wood that was used. There was a lot of palm trees, a lot of flowers, a lot of pomegranates. All what I saw was like, oh, this is starting to look like a garden.
mm,
Presence of God is here. This is a Garden of Eden kind of imagery here, which I mean makes sense biblically. You know, if it's the dwelling place of God, it's going to look like the original dwelling place biblically in Genesis. And then
mm.
now how we're the temple, God dwells in us. I was like, this is all really cool stuff. But all everybody heard was go to the gym,
Go to the
eat
gym.
right. And then no one even did it like 2 weeks later, that part either.
Yeah,
It's like yeah, yeah.
yeah. Wow. How do you prepare a message? What is your routine? Do you have one, or is it just different every time still?
Um I think I just start writing. I just start getting thoughts down. I start with an introduction. By introduction, I mean straight up just writing out, "Hi everybody, good morning. How are you? My name is Eric. Thank you for joining us." Like not even actual getting into a sermon content, just writing out, "Welcome,"
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um, I, I don't have a method. I just start writing my thoughts down, and then I mean now I kind of have structure, but I haven't taken a preaching class.
Mm,
I'm I'm learning all as I go. I tried to get into a preaching class. I tried to audit one at DTS, but they kicked me out, saying now they kicked me out saying you're not going to get the full experience because you're auditing, so we're kicking you out of the class. And I was like, well, now I'm getting no experience. Thanks a lot. So um, so now I'm just my method's just sitting down and just grinding out each and every word, which is very hard for me to do.
yeah.
Especially, I mean, it's like I have a blank canvas and I'm supposed to paint something really good, and I don't know what I'm even like what it looks like. It's sort of like a puzzle, maybe like
Yeah.
put a puzzle together, but you don't have the reference picture that you look at to know where each pieces go. It's like that for me, except all the pieces are white and they're all shaped weird. I know that it could all be put into something really good. I just don't know what it's supposed to look like or how I'm supposed to get there. So it's really frustrating. It's like walking in the dark for me whenever
Mm,
I'm preparing a sermon. Um, and I feel like whenever I read a passage, I'm like, I don't know what to say about this for 30 minutes, especially when it's like a psalm or a proverb. It's like, especially if it's a proverb, it's like, well, it's plain and clear. It's right there. Like, what else is there to talk about
Eat too much
here?
honey, and you will be sick. Let me tell you what that means in 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like, the heck.
Yeah.
Um, So I always struggle with that. But once I start getting the ball rolling, it just starts to compound. Right now, what it looks like for me is introducing uh, a theological proposition saying, I don't know, for example, Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And then a homiletical proposition, I got this off from my roommate who has taken preaching classes and knows what he's doing. A homiletical proposition being kind of like the call to action. Because Jesus came to seek and save the lost, now you go and do this and that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm developing that in the message I'm currently preparing. Um, and then once I have that, I find if it's a topical one, I find the key verses that support this biblical idea, or if it's expository message, I'm like, all right, this is the text we're in. I read it, and then what I do is I maybe half of the time I talk through the text, explain it, context. This is what this means. This is what that means. This is why so and so said this. This is why that was important. This is why you should care. Blah blah blah. Just really explained the text very thoroughly. I try to do, and I almost use that as a crutch because that's probably easier for me to do than to draw an application from. Is just explain and talk away about what's going on in the passage. I maybe do that for half of my allowed time, 15-20 minutes of that. Then the remaining 10-15 minutes, talk about application, talk about why you should care about this, how this could challenge you spiritually, kind of thing. And that's probably the hardest part for me
Yeah.
is finding the need of whatever of whoever the audience is, and making the point of the message, what's the word, desirable,
Yeah.
attractive. I remember Timothy Keller, he said something along the lines of a good rip a good preacher, I think, makes a good sermon is everything. To have a great sermon, no, wait, okay, a good sermon is, wait, no, okay, this is what it is. I have it now. A great sermon is everything that a good sermon is, but with all the bad stuff taken out. That's what he says, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's helpful, but also not very helpful.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, and that's kind of what my pastor's been telling me and teaching me is whenever I preach, I could trim a lot of fat off of my sermons and the core message will still be there. 90% of the content will still be there. So it's like I could trim off 1,000 words off of all my messages, which are about 4,000 to 5,000, and I will still be saying all the same things just as well.
Yeah.
And then I could take off even more, and then the sermon will still be, you know what I mean? And then another thing where I struggle with is not drawing out enough from key points. I would start off with a really great idea from a passage, a really great observation, application. I extract 30% of what could have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just leave a lot on the table. And in my head, I'm like, well, there's nothing else to talk about. What do you mean? What
Hmm.
else? And then it's like, well, there was, and this is what it could have been. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I guess things like that just come with experience.
When you preach,
But
do you go like verse by verse or idea by idea or just general themes?
I usually go verse by verse.
Okay.
Um, and then afterwards is when I'm like, all right, this is where we're at now. Well, yeah, it's usually whenever I'm explaining the text, obviously verse by verse. But once I go through it all, it's like, all right, now that we have the whole picture, now really is when the sermon starts, kind
Okay.
of thing.
Yeah.
But I prefer to do. I hate doing 3-point sermons or any point sermons. That's what my pastor is trying to teach me to do. It's a very Presbyterian thing to do, maybe a very Timothy Keller thing to do also, which he's a big fan of, is 3-point sermons, boom, 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 boom. I hate doing that. It's too much boring structure for me. I really love doing narratives, a narrative
Oh
sermon,
yeah.
just kind of walking through. And
Hmm.
those, I think everybody likes that. Those are more compelling. They're more fun to hear. They're interesting,
Yeah.
but those are really hard to do. Only like expert speakers who've been doing it for years could do that consistently well. And
Yeah.
I think everybody, wants to do a great job, and everybody thinks they're the best, maybe kind of thing. So I'm like, oh yeah, I could do one. Watch this, and then it's terrible, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, what do you expect?
So let me ask you this.
Um,
You started off in a Catholic church. You ended up in a Pentecostal church for several years, very charismatic church. And now you're in actually then you went to a non-denominational church where you worked with me actually. We worked together at Chase Oaks for a while. And then you went to Irving Bible, which are they non-denominational? Okay, so then you went to
mhm.
another non-denominational. Then you ended up Presbyterian. So you've gone from Catholic to Presbyterian and Pentecostal and non-denominational in the middle. So how let me ask that, has your theology changed from the journey of the Pentecostal life to the Presbyterian life? Or have you had to embrace other things as a Presbyterian? Like, are you dunking babies now or other things like that?
I think for the most part, growing up, once I actually was old enough to really consider the things I was being exposed to and taught. So when I was in the Catholic Church, I didn't really think much deeply about what was going on around me because I didn't even really care in the first place. But after that, the churches I was part of, I feel like they were maybe like most churches in the South of the United States and in general, they're all like sort of maybe a flavor of Baptist. Same idea of baptism, same idea of um, people in leadership, maybe communion every once in a while kind of thing. And every church I went to was kind of the same thing. Well, baptism it's what is it? What people say, an outward expression of an inward
Conversion?
decision.
Oh
There you
yeah.
go. That was common to every church I went to, up to the point where I'm at right now, and also I think what communion was as well. Not really a lot of people, a lot of the churches I went to talked about what they believe was going on in communion, if anything, if it was just memorial or something else. Um, but no one really had a high view of that, apart from the Catholic Church, of course. But I didn't really think much of that. So coming from all that, although I went to a bunch of different traditions, a lot of the things that I thought were dividing issues were like, oh, I feel like they're kind of all the same here. All those things that people talk about being different. So it was easy for me to transition from each one to each, and there was really I didn't feel any type of way. I didn't feel any internal conflict about the churches I was going at. I mean, they were all, um, from my point of view, at the time when I was there, they were biblical.
Hmm.
I I felt like okay, this is a good church for me. Whatever they affirm, probably the Apostles' Creed, which checks off a lot of boxes already. Um, but coming from all those churches and now being part of a Presbyterian church plant, um, there's a lot of things where I feel like a closeted, I don't know, Baptist maybe, um, where it's like, yeah, everyone around me affirms infant baptism. This is what communion is. Um, yeah, women could be elders here at our church. Um, what else? And then just all the liturgy as well is something that I wasn't first used to, but it's something that I really do very much prefer and enjoy. Um, yeah. But I think maybe the biggest ones. for me, where I'm still on the fence about, would be infant baptism. And we had one baptism service where I think maybe 3 or 4 kids got baptized. One of them was a baby, another full-grown woman, and there was a lot of joy in the room. I think, I mean, set aside what I believe or what I think I believe or whatever. I think seeing of the joy in the parents' face, watching their baby, their child be baptized, was something special.
Mhm.
Although that also doesn't determine doctrine either. That doesn't mean much in terms of that, but it was a really sweet experience to see parents go through that. And I don't know that in the fullest extent. I'm not a father. I don't know what it's like to have a child and baptize them in that way, where it's such a deep and spiritual and huge step as a family, especially in the covenantal framework. Um, yeah, that was a very sweet moment in our church. It was very, very communal. Really brought us all together closer. I got to experience that together, which was very, very sweet. And I'm not sure if it's a Presbyterian thing or not, or maybe it's just my pastor's thought, but he's a millennialist,
Mhm.
and
I think that might be a
I
Presbyterian
don't.
thing because I think
Yeah,
I know Timothy Keller was all millennial as well.
yeah,
So were Jehovah's
that
Witnesses
sounds
though.
about right.
Kidding.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I mean, I don't know how I feel about that either. I'm very taking my eschatology class at DTS, so still TBD on those things. Um, but I don't know, like, if the events in Revelation are going to happen loosely on how they're described, like, I would prefer not to be here for that. But then again, in a millennialist point of view, it's like not going to happen either.
Uh-huh.
But if they were to happen, it's like, yeah, I would like to be raptured and not be there for that, because that sounds scary.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not happening in their point of view, so it's like, so you don't worry about. I don't know, but I'm only there as a pastoral resident, which means I don't have to affirm any of those things to be a part of the church or even work there. Our denomination is called ECO, very young denomination, maybe a little over 10 years old. It came out of the PCUSA church after they split over doctrinal differences. Um, I like to describe the ECO denomination as sort of halfway between PCUSA, which is quite liberal on a lot of issues, and on the other side being PCA, which is very conservative on a lot of those issues. So ECO will be right in between, where we don't affirm homosexual marriages or leadership, but we do allow women in leadership up to eldership, which is something that I'm not used to. And then we're conservative on the homosexual issues, but liberal on the gender ones, I guess.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
it comes to that time, this is just out of curiosity and I asked this to one of the other guests I had on the podcast. He's an Anglican priest. It was the first episode. Because I know of people who have signed,
Mhm.
I believe this documents so that they can get credentialed, but didn't actually believe that. Do you think that would be you? Do you think you'd be willing to do that? Or are you too honest for that?
I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, like,
And you know what?
uh,
I am genuinely shocked at how many people just lie. Like
yeah,
I'm thinking you're gonna commit your life to this like denomination and you're just gonna lie about it from the
yeah.
beginning.
If
But
I'm a
it's very
baptized
common.
zone
I don't know if it's
baby,
because it's so hard to find someone that perfectly aligns that you just get to the point where you just
yeah,
whatever, I'll sign it. But
yeah.
it's
I
just
mean,
interesting. So I figured I'd ask.
I am open to being convinced of infant baptism. I feel like I'm like one or two good arguments away from be like, okay, I could see that. However, the women eldership one, that one, I feel like I'm That one I have to work pretty hard to change my mind on. That one so I have to work pretty hard
What
to
about
change my mind on that one.
what about women preaching? Not necessarily having an official
Yeah.
position as elder, but like just preaching in the church, do you view that as
Hmm.
different, or do you view that as one and the same, It's part of the role of the elder
Uh,
to preach, so.
I think, well, in the New Testament, elder and pastor was the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's not how it is in our church today. It's just how the church evolved, I guess. But I think it's fine. I have no problem with
Mhm.
um, a woman being having the title of pastor. Um, yeah, yeah. So or preaching as well. And
Yeah.
I think it's maybe just because a lot of my spiritual life started there, grew up there, so I never had any contention there. I grew up in that space. Almost every church I went to, I think, was had women with the title of pastor. So it was like, oh yeah, this is normal for me. What, people disagree about this? Well, why? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if you've read this. It's Dr. Glon's book. It got
Hmm.
released I think a couple months ago. It's pretty good. I recommend it. It's interesting. So I recommend it. Just throwing it out there. Nobody's Mother by Dr. Glon. Anyways, did you hear that we're taking rabbit holes? We haven't tackled like a single question from the
Let's
list that I gave you. Maybe one. Anyways, did you hear about the Alistair Begg thing that happened last week?
know what happened.
Okay, well, do you know who Alistair Begg is?
I think
Okay.
I read one of his books.
Okay, so he's a pastor out in I think Ohio. I think Ohio, somewhere in the northwest, somewhere in the Midwest. And this happened in September, I think. He was like on a podcast interview or something, and a grandma asked him, "Hey, if my son is getting married to a transgender person, should I go to the wedding?" And first of all, I don't even know what that means. Like, transgender, how? Is it like a man transitioning to a woman transition? There was no explanation, so I have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
But Alistair Begg's advice was like, as long as they know that you have like solid Christian convictions, that you don't affirm the marriage, then I think that you should go, and you should bring a gift to show them Christian love and keep those doors open so you can continue to minister to them and evangelize to them and all of that. Because if you don't go to the wedding, they might just close you off and you lose that chance forever. So he got taken off several radio stations, lost a lot of support, was called out by everybody, maybe not everybody, was called out by so many of the people that you would expect, like Justin Peters and people like that, called him out and told him that he was just dead wrong and all sorts of stuff. So since you were talking about the liberal PC whatever and the conservative one, I just thought I'd ask your perspective on that if you had any perspective. Hey, thank you. Do you want to say hi to Eric?
You want to say hi?
Darian just came in. She brought me.
I just coached him on how to be quiet, so he might be like,
Oh, she brought me some coffee. Say hi, Diego. Look, it's Eric. You want to come here and say hi?
Hey, Digolim,
Say hi.
what up? Hey,
Thank you, babe. I appreciate it. Oh, this?
cream is in there.
Oh, okay, got you. What was I talking about?
Liberal.
Oh, yeah.
Pastor Big Bang.
That's right. So yeah, I was just maybe you could speak to that. What your perspective is on like a Christian attending a homosexual wedding or a transgender
Hmm.
one, whatever that would mean.
Yeah, I think I'm probably. I mean, I am going to assume that the couple getting married are not Christian.
Right.
So, I mean, that'll be one thing to consider about joining. It's like, well, they're not Christian, so I can't expect them to do Christian-like things.
True.
Apart from getting married, getting married is a Christian thing. Um, but I don't know. The last time I thought deeply about this, I don't remember what questions I asked myself and how I got there. But I was like, okay, I think this is what I'll do, and it sounds right. I feel like I this is justified for me to do this. I don't remember what questions I asked myself and how I got there. I remember I did think very deeply about it and came to the conclusion that I think I would go, me personally.
Yeah.
I I think it was on the basis of obviously what is the most loving thing I could do. What I think what I have a problem with is when people say something along the lines of it's loving to tell someone they're going to hell. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I feel like maybe that kind of same sentiment comes into this. Like you could be loving to them by not going because you're not going to affirm their decision, which is, in rebellion. So you're doing them a favor by, being a testimony to kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get you. And that's kind of the advice that Alistair Begg gave. So you're siding with
Yeah.
Alistair Begg here in that, you know what?
Yeah.
Like, just because I'm present at a wedding doesn't mean that I'm affirming what's happening. There could be all
Yeah.
sorts of other issues. Um, but everybody else was saying, well, no, by being there, you're affirming it, especially if you bring a gift and stuff like that. So it was big Christian news for the past couple of weeks. Alan Parr
Mm-hmm.
commented on it. Allie Beth Stuckey as well, if you watch her at all. I don't watch her very much, but I know that she commented on it. Just a lot of people. And yeah, you're in the pastoral world now. So these are the kind of questions you're gonna have to wrestle with really heavily. I've never been in a position where I've had to make that decision. And I still
Yeah.
don't know what I would do. I'm still
Yeah.
it's a very hard question, especially like if you're not a church leader, I think that's one thing. But if you are leading a congregation, I think it is a different thing and different questions have to be asked.
Yeah.
So it is
Yeah.
hard. I don't have an answer. I just thought I'd pick your brain and see where your head was at and what you were thinking because they are hard issues and people like
Mm-hmm.
to make it seem like it's just so black and white. And I guess in a sense it
Yeah.
is, but getting to that is quite difficult, I think. But anyways, I forgot what we were talking about before this. Oh yeah, your journey from uh, the Pentecostal world, moving into the non-denom world, into the Presbyterian world, and just kind of where your belief system was. So, well, cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're graduating in a couple of months, and like you said, you hopefully will never have to write an academic paper again. But who knows what will happen in the future? You're still young, and you're not married yet, are you? I don't think. Okay. So who knows what'll happen, but tell the people about your degree program. What did you study?
I'm
How was it informed?
yeah. I'm in the Apologetics and Evangelism program. We're at DTS. It covers, I mean, all the same theology and Bible exposition classes that almost every degree covers. Um, it doesn't cover languages, which is why I chose it. I did not want to have to learn Greek or Hebrew, but I also didn't want a 30-hour program. I wanted something much longer. But what it what it does cover is it comes from a presuppositional view that apologetics is for the church, is mainly for the Christian. Um, Fresh new believer. Okay, now let's help solidify your faith by equipping you to, sort of defend
When you say,
your
sorry to
mind
interrupt,
from.
when you say that it's for the believer, you mean that apologetics isn't a tool necessarily or primarily to win converts. Like you're not going to reason someone into the Christian faith, essentially, right? Is that what you're?
Well, no. What I'm saying is the way DTS, at least in one of my classes, and one of my professors said this, is what he kind of is trying to get the program to be is something for someone to teach within a church so that the new believers could not be shaken up.
Got you.
Not that saying apologetics is for this or not for that.
Got
He's saying
you.
this is how we hope you use it.
Okay.
Um,
So its primary use is for
so
the edification and strength of the church. And then secondarily, it's also beneficial for the non-believer in that it shows the
that
reasonableness behind the faith.
that is what that is what one of our professors is hoping we use
Got you. Cool.
what we know for. Yeah, yeah. And probably up to this point, I feel like it's all been cool things that I've learned somewhere in the back of my mind. I don't know how relevant it is for me right now. For other people in the program, it feels like they're actually using these tools, using the things they know to actually engage with people in their lives and having conversations, really good ones. I hear about them in class, and I'm just there like, I don't know if I could have done that. I don't know if I am taking in everything I'm learning, or if my area of ministry, um, if this is, you know, practical for that kind of, which I mean, it is, I guess, but I just haven't found myself yet in all the 4 years I've been in this program where I'm like, okay, this is coming in handy. Could be just circumstance, I guess. Um, but the program is great. I think one of the big things I took away from it, which I think is very practical and a huge thing, one observation I made and concluded was how to kind of minister to Gen Z and below,
Mm.
and how to make the gospel attractive to them.
Mm.
And what it is, I don't know, maybe a generation from 1940s, 1950s, where Christianity reigned and those were the expectations of life, and they felt a lot of, I don't know, what I've heard and seen is a lot of people felt a lot of guilt over the things they've done, a lot of shame. If they're not doing things right, well, then you better start getting it right. So hearing the gospel and hearing that there is forgiveness and second chance, that was very attractive to them. However, now these days, most people don't care if they need forgiveness or not, because in their mind, they're justified. You know what I mean? How dare you tell someone that what they're doing is wrong? They're living from their point of view, and that's all that matters.
Mm.
That's kind of what we're living in right now.
Yeah.
But the part of the gospel that I think is key and that would attract that generation and below is the part about justice, and the part about that all things will be made new and things will be good one day. Because that's really what a lot of young people are concerned about. They're concerned about the renewal of all things, not really more so, oh, there's forgiveness of sins, but rather that there is a hope at the end of times that finally all things will be good.
Yeah.
And that is what I think attracts younger people. Not so much, hey, there's forgiveness for your sins. No, but hey, there's a good hope at the end that you could be a part of, and you could realize if you so and so, and then the rest of the gospel.
Yeah.
Still, of course, having the forgiveness of sins part in there, but no longer that being the emphasis, rather it being the bodily hope that is the emphasis. And whenever I preach, I sometimes make that an emphasis whenever I get into the gospel part of a message, because I'm preaching to a bunch of 20-year-olds at our church who are concerned about those things. And that is what attracts them to Christianity primarily.
Yeah. No, it's
I learned that, and I came to that conclusion in the program.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that, because that does seem to be the great fight of the world today. Is everybody recognizes that the worlds and its system are busted. Like everybody knows what's happening in Ukraine is awful. What's happening in Israel and Gaza, Palestine, that whole thing is awful. Everybody knows what's happening. It's just there's a bad system in place, and everybody's looking for the redemption of it, and people just disagree on what that system is. If you turn to politics, Republicans have perspective X. This is how we make the world better. If you look to the Democrats, they have perspective Y. No, this is how we make the world better. If you look at Christians, they have a very unique perspective. Like, well, no, it's not even through us. It's by the hope that Jesus offers. And kind of starting there is very valid. It's important because that's where people's concerns are at. So that is interesting, and that does answer a lot. There's a problem of loneliness and suicide and all sorts of stuff. And how do we address that? In different perspective, we'll say different things, but ultimately we're all looking for the answer to these same questions. So it's
Hmm.
interesting that you say that, because I've been thinking about similar things like that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It was one of the books I read for class called "Telling a Better Story." I think that's what it was called. It was such a good book. Learned a lot from it, but it just asked the question: how to present the gospel to someone is what is the biggest need or question that your audience has, and how does the gospel answer it?
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I was like, well, this seems to be justice and uh, peace and life, and all those things are the biggest question of our generation. And this is how the gospel answers it, through our hope at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's typically what I do as well. It's kind of starting at the understanding that, everything's broken. Look at this world. We can all agree that it's messed up and needs redemption. Let me tell you what
Hmm.
the Bible says will happen one day. Here's biblical redemption and the restoration of all things, as you mentioned. Now, how do we get there? And that's where that bridge comes. Well, there's sin that separates us from that, and here's the
Hmm.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
Bridging that gap, but giving them the end goal first, and then going back and telling them how to get there. But
Hmm. Yeah.
but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that that's a valuable change for younger people, because I know when I was growing up in the church, it was very formulaic. It was like, look, we're in debt to God. The debt is too big. We can't pay it. And therefore, we need someone to pay it on our behalf. And that's Jesus. And he
Yeah.
died for your sins. And it's
Yeah.
all great. It's all, I affirm all of that.
Yeah.
But
A 20-year-old is going to hear
if
that and be
someone who
like, I
doesn't
don't care.
care about the Bible or the gospel or anything, it's not really all that compelling. And obviously the Holy Spirit makes it compelling, but there is something about showing them, like, this is the vision that God has for the world, and you can be a part of this. You can be a part of this restoration. And that's where I find that people
Hmm.
are, they view Christianity as more than just a bunch of rules. They view it as this, like,
Yeah.
vision for humanity and human flourishing. And that really is what
Yeah.
touches people's lives. So, and that's kind of what Jesus did a lot. I mean, if you read, I don't know, I'm thinking about the book of Matthew because I'm preaching tomorrow, but if you read the book of Matthew, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God is like this, the kingdom of God is like this. It's constantly pushing us towards a vision of what's to come, and that being the grounds for talking about the redemption and the forgiveness of sins. So yeah, no,
Hmm.
interesting conversation. I wish we had more time to talk about that, but I did want to ask you one more question. How did you determine your call to pastoral ministry? Because I know that you've probably been wrestling with that for maybe like 7 or 8 years at this point, from when we first talked,
Yeah. Yeah.
when you were in probably
I,
college. I don't think you were in high school anymore, but I think you were in college by that
I
point.
I remember one time I was in the back of your car and I was like, Victor, I think I want to be a pastor. I don't know why. I don't know why I said that or felt that way, or if it was valid or not. I think maybe I was just caught up in the moment of seeing what the pastors in my life looked like at the time. And then what you told me was,
Oh
Eric,
gosh.
like 10% of what you see a pastor does. No, what you see what a pastor does is only 10% of their job, which is what you see on stage. 90% of it is meeting with people, counseling people, making hard decisions, having to shepherd hundreds of people. Like all that is hard stuff to do, and that's what most of it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know what that meant or what that means. But what I did see was instead, um, you, our youth pastor at the time, got paid to teach once a week and hang out with a bunch of high schoolers and have fun with them. That's what I saw, and I was like, that's very attractive. That sounds like an ideal job for me, kind of thing. Um,
You also never
but
saw my
right
paycheck,
now,
though. It might have been less attractive if you saw my paycheck. Anyways,
I I think you said one time your paycheck was enough for you to live, and I think like a little bit more.
yeah, yeah.
And I guess this was 2016, so I guess I don't know what it was, fourteen
I think
dollars
at
an
that
hour maybe. It's like
2016, I was making $12,000 a year,
that's a
working
lot for a high schooler.
working essentially full time. but
That's a lot for a high schooler. $1,000 a month. I was making at HEB maybe like $100 a week.
yeah, well, that is different.
So in my head, I was like, "Oh dang, you ain't a lot of money." But I think the way the Lord has worked in my life, maybe very few times have I ever gotten a strong kind of feeling, a strong kind of like, no, this isn't right for me. I hate using the phrase, I didn't feel peace about it. I feel like that's often overused and not often correct, nourishing you to make decisions about how you feel, and say it's the Lord kind of thing. I feel like that's kind of, it gets muddy when you're there.
Yeah.
But a few times in my life where I felt like, okay, this is the Lord. I didn't feel any of that in any of my process here. Most of the time, 90% of it would be I just make a decision and then I just roll with it for as long as it is available. And I think the Lord trusts me to kind of just use wisdom and discernment to make decisions like that, for things that, for bigger things like ministry. I just decided one day that I think I would really enjoy doing this. I want to do it. I would desire to do it. There are means to do it. So I'm gonna pursue it, and then
And I
hopefully
think
the
you're
Lord
gifted
blesses
for it
it.
as well. I think that I would add that one. I think you're gifted for it.
Yeah, I mean, at the time that was not a known, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's really what it looked like for me is I want to. There's a means for it. There's support around me as well about it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it and just hope that I make it through.
Yeah. And that's
And
why,
now here I am.
yeah, and that's why I like at Chase Oaks, you did a summer internship. You were there for maybe 3 months or something, and you just got to try it out, because you had never worked in a church
Hmm.
before, and you got to try it out and see, like, is this even for me? Like, I know that I'm gifted and I know that I have some sense of enjoyment, but like, do I really? And you got to try it out, and then
Yeah,
at IBC, you did the same thing. You were an intern or a resident there for what, 8, 9 months?
a year,
A year?
like 13 months.
Okay, you were there for 13 months, and the same thing, you got to just experiment and see where you fit into
Yeah.
church, and you're continuing to do that, and I think that stuff like that in churches is so valuable. It's kind of the only way to really, maybe I shouldn't say it's the only way, but it's a really powerful way to confirm kind of that calling that you have, is to just commit a year, a couple months, whatever it is, to just working in the church,
Hmm.
seeing how you like it, seeing how your gifts develop, seeing what the pastors and the staff think about you, because they can confirm calls or help you in that confirmation of the call. So yeah, so I'm glad that you did it. I'm glad that you pursued pastoral ministry and are continuing to pursue it and are seeing that you are in fact gifted, and other people are seeing that as well. Because that that's powerful. It means a lot. It makes it more than just you. It's not just you
Yeah.
deciding you want this. You have professors behind you. You have me and Glenn and just other people in your proximity behind you. You have your church behind you. And that does
Hmm.
take a lot of the pressure off of you, because it's like, okay, God has given these people the Holy Spirit as well, and they're all seeing the same thing I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so yeah, so I love internships and residencies. I think they're vital, so important.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to finally having benefits for once in my life.
Yeah, yeah, no, I
The
mean,
thing about all internships, residencies is they're all part time,
yeah,
and
and you
I'm
know what?
25.
I mean, not to make it a resume credential kind of thing, but you've worked for some pretty legit organizations, man. Like Chase Oaks is huge, IBC is huge.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember the Presbyterian church. Don't tell me.
High,
Highland Park.
Highland Park Presbyterian Church
Yeah,
in the eco denomination. Highland Park is the flagship congregation. It's the largest church in
yeah.
the entire denomination, and it's kind of the model standard for what every other church does within it. They look to that one to see, oh, that's what they're doing. This is how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So that is a sort of resume booster, at least within that
Yeah,
world.
and obviously that's not why you did it, but you know what? Like one day
Yeah.
that's gonna be important whenever you apply. I know one day you want to live in like the Northwest, right? Or something,
That
Colorado,
would
somewhere
be
cooler.
that would be nice. Just wanting to live somewhere Twilight like, because I think that's really
Yeah.
great.
So I mean that's all stuff that you've developed and experience that you have because it takes a certain kind of person and a certain kind of knowledge to work at a large church like that. And usually larger churches want people with experience at larger five campus churches or whatever. So all that to say, you know, your time is coming. You've tracked through the mud all this time and all of that, but you're almost graduating and you'll have a little bit more freedom and
Yeah.
flexibility to really consider, okay, what's next for me? Um, so that's exciting, man. That's pretty cool. I'm Me and Darian made, as you know, a change like 7 or 8 months ago in June, whenever that was in June. We made a transition and we found a new church and all of that. And man, it was such a good decision. And it was scary in the beginning and frustrating at points and concerning and like, what the heck are we doing and how are we going to do this? And the Lord put everything in place and we came out ahead. But it just took that confidence and that trust in the Lord to say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the Lord wants this from us. How do we get there? And what is He asking of us? And we're really grateful that we obeyed and listened, man, because it's been really good. So be encouraged.
Yeah.
Your time is coming, and it's gonna be really cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the more challenging things maybe not challenging, but yeah, I mean, I've been challenged. But the harder things for me to kind of go through is is like being, what am I saying? Okay, let me just restart that. Some things I've learned about myself that make it hard for me to do the job is not having, maybe not having yet the qualities that are like required of me. For example, I'm not much of a self starter. I'm really good at being at doing what I'm told. You know, if my boss tells me do this, do that, I'm gonna do it exactly the way it's told on time and, you know, no questions asked kind of thing. What I can't do is identify a need and start solving it. You know what I mean? Without being told.
Mm,
That's hard for me to do. My mind just doesn't work that way.
yeah.
And if I am want to church plant one day, like that's a necessary skill. Um, and I've been praying, like, Lord, can I start being a self starter? Can I be an initiator? Could I be like independent like that? Because that seems like pretty big on that front. And also learning that I'm not a confrontational person in any regard. If one of the volunteers says, "Hey, I can't make it," and they've said that 8 times in a row, I'm gonna be like, "Oh man, how could I tell them like, hey, this isn't okay. This is gonna be a hard conversation for me to have." When it's
Mm,
probably, you know, like it's not even that a big deal, and not only that, but like you would be in the right also, because that's not a real example. That's never happened, but in that example, you know, it's like, you know, it would be right and proper for you to like have a conversation with them,
right.
or even with
Interesting.
something small. Like, yeah, I it's just hard for me to do that because it's awkward.
Yeah.
I don't know how the other person is going to react or whatever, and things like that have been stuff that I've identified in myself where I am in lack and would like to grow in, just so I could do the job better.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
here's
if I
just my
was,
2 cents. I think that you should definitely continue to pray that, and the gaps that you see in your skills to perform pastoral ministry well, I think continue to pray for those, but then also recognize that like we're all limited beings and we all have
mhm,
deficiencies and we all have strengths, and you're not going to be planting a church alone.
yeah,
And whenever you're leading a church, you're not going to be leading a church alone. And you might not be a great, there's a problem, here's how we're going to address it. But other people will be. And that's where I think I think it's a healthy perspective to be able to say, you know what, I'm not good at this. And that's okay. I'll keep praying for it and I'll try to develop it. But
Mm-hmm.
Darian or leader X or leader Y has an eye for this. And I'm going to bring them in and I'm just going
Yeah.
to feed off them and be like, hey, what do you see? Or can you ask people what they see? And then can you help me problem solve? Here's what will kill you as a pastor and will have you burnt out and debilitated is trying to do everything. And I know that's such a cliche
Mm-hmm.
in 2023 or 2024, like, oh, you have your limits and go into your strengths and stuff like that. I know it's such a cliche, but even then, like, there's a certain level of pressure on a pastor to be able to do everything, and it's unrealistic. We're not God.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to happen. So I think that a pastor is most effective when they have a a humble self of themselves and recognize this is what I'm really good at. And I say that humbly, but I'm excellent at these
Yeah.
four things. I'm okay at these three, and I'm terrible at these five. How can I
Mm-hmm.
make sure that these five are taken care of when I know I'm going to do a bad job? And that's
Yeah.
where
Okay.
leadership
Yeah, that makes
development
sense.
and all of that. But if you try doing the
Yeah.
four things that you do great, the three things you do okay, and the five things that you do terrible, um, you're going to be angry, you're going to be tired, you're going to be frustrated, and it's just not sustainable. A year down the road, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to be like, I hate my job. What am I doing? So as a young
Yeah.
up and coming minister, catch that perspective early on, man. You don't have to do anything. The church will expect you to do everything sometimes. And that's where you just have to
Mm-hmm.
be um, a person of conviction and say, hey, you know what? I know you want me to do all these
Yeah.
things. I don't think that's a possibility for any human. And navigate
Yeah.
those conversations well and all that. But yeah, man, don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're missing this to be a good pastor. You're missing this to be a good pastor. Every great
Mm-hmm.
pastor has all sorts of things that they're missing, but they make up for it
Yeah.
by being just healthy leaders who build people up and enable them to do what they've been gifted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
that.
That's
And then I
very
have one
true.
more thing to say about the other thing that you said, but I can't even remember what that was now. So, hmm.
I remember.
Yeah, you
Um,
had talked about how you feel like you're not prepared because of that and because of something else, and I can't remember the second one. And I had something to say, but I just talked too long, I guess, and I forgot.
I mean, that's all I said was how I feel like I'm not prepared for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Um, yeah. I think because I'm young, I fall into maybe it's not even a trap. Maybe it's just how younger professionals kind of think is I'm young, I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna, take it, take the world by storm kind of thing. I'm gonna be the just youthful ambition, and then it takes experience and age to realize that that's not realistic. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm in that transition stage when before I've experienced everything, it's all just wonder and something to look forward to. And it's when you're there before everything, when it all seems doable and possible.
Hmm.
But then when you're in the middle of it, it's like, oh, it really isn't all doable and possible. And that's where I'm at right now.
Well, that's the part where the faith has to come in, you know? Like you can't do the
Yeah,
job of pastoral ministry outside of the empowerment of the Holy Spirit. So youthful ambition might have
yeah,
gotten you there, but the Spirit of the Lord will
hmm,
sustain you throughout. So I think that's again it's a very healthy perspective. Like that's good. If you were thinking, man, I've been doing this for a couple years now, working in the churches, and I got this. I don't need anybody. That
yeah,
would be like, okay, red flag, slow down, bro. Like, no, you need to
hmm,
chill. You need people, and your ambition won't carry you. You're gonna need something
yeah,
weightier and more substantial. So again, even if it seems like
yeah,
this is a problem, it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing that you're feeling this because it reminds you it's
yeah,
not my doing, it's the Lord's doing, and I don't do it alone. I do it
yeah,
in unity with
absolutely.
the church.
Yeah, yeah. The people around me at work, our staff at Small Little Church Plant, which by the way, the past month, 4 or 5 weeks, we've been averaging at least 55 people a Sunday,
Oh, wow, that's
which is
awesome.
huge growth because a few months ago we were like at 25 people
I
a
think the
Sunday.
Sunday that I went, which was in July, it was mid-July that I was there when you preached.
Hmm.
There was probably about
Like 30.
Probably about 30 people that day. It felt a little busy.
Yeah.
And you had told me that it was a good
Yeah.
turnout, so but that was 30 people.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets packed now, and the communion line is massive.
It's awesome.
But my coworker there, there's three of us there. Emily, our worship leader, she her job and her natural gifts make my job easier.
Hmm.
Whenever we're sitting down in a meeting, which we do every week, she facilitates the meeting, and she does a really good job of it. And at the end of the meeting, what she does is she sends out on Teams our action items kind of thing, where it's like, Eric, this is what we talked about in meeting. These are your to-do things this week. And that's really helpful for me because I zone out at some point during the meeting and I may have missed something, but I know I will get a recap at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't use that as a crutch to do any of those things, but I know at the end I'm gonna get a recap and I'm gonna get what my duties are. And she's really good at taking note and doing all those things. And I've told her before, like, you make my job easier because of things you do. But there's other times also where it's like they're talking about for our 1 year anniversary, we had like a 15-minute discussion. I wasn't part of it because I was like, why are we talking about this? A 15-minute discussion of whether we should have like a cake at our 1 year anniversary. And I'm sitting there like, why does this matter? Why are we spending so much time talking about this? Like, I don't care if we have a cake or not. Are other people going to care? Do you care? Like, sometimes stuff like that happens where I'm just like, why are we spending so much time on this one thing? For them, it's a big deal, I guess, and they may have a better grasp on what other people in the congregation may feel. So maybe it is something worth spending time on.
Hmm.
But I sometimes have that position of, why do you? Oh, this doesn't matter, you know. But it's also me not being concerned with the details like she is.
Right.
So she's able to think about those things and do them well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that you had said, I remembered while you were talking, was you don't feel comfortable with confrontation very much. That was the other thing. So, I don't know if you remember
So,
back in the day when before I went to DTS, I was pretty confrontational. I was not scared at all. I was like, you need to do this and you need to stop
true.
doing this. And I was like I mean, again, coming from that charismatic Pentecostal background that's like remove sin and you need to do things X like this. That was my perspective. And then I went to DTS and I got to work. Honestly, it was all it was all because of Chase Oaks that I kind of like let go of that. Like because of if you remember Jack Warren and Katie and Cindy Park, they were all just like not that they weren't confrontational, but they were just so chill and they were like, hey, you know what? It's okay that you didn't get that done. Let's talk about how you can
Hmm.
what they were just so filled with grace that I was like, man, I want to be like that. That's a good way to be, as
Hmm.
opposed to how I was.
Yeah.
It was like just berating people and coming down on them hard and all that. So all that to say, I kind of adopted that method, and now I feel like I've leaned too much into it, and now I kind of feel like you a little bit like, man, now it's hard for me to go back into the confrontation world because I feel like I don't want
Yeah.
to be the Victor that I was before. I really
Yeah.
like this grace-filled Victor that's like, hey, it's okay that you weren't able to serve. Things happen. Babies get sick. Don't worry about it. But
Hmm.
but in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, I struggle with
That's where
that
I'm at
same
right
thing of
now.
like, I don't want to be too
Yeah.
confrontational because I know how I
Yeah.
can be, and I don't want to be like that anymore. So,
Yeah.
so I feel you. That's all I wanted to say. I feel you. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that feels right here in the heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this will be a good time to end because we've been going for a good time. But Eric, thanks for hopping in. I know you were a little nervous and not sure how it was gonna go, but hopefully I made it not scary for you. And I feel like it was very conversational. So thanks for
Yeah.
coming
Very
on,
much
man.
so.
I really appreciate it. Maybe we can do it again for season 2 or something, and we can get some updates after you've graduated and see where you're at then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything you
Sounds
want to
good,
say
Vic.
to anyone potentially listening before I stop recording?
If you're in Dallas, come to Good Shepherd Oak Cliff.
There it is, Good Shepherd Oak Cliff. Well, I guess you
Yes.
said where it is. It's in Oak Cliff.
Yep. It's part of our name.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording and then you can just stay on just so I can actually say bye to you without people watching. But all right, guys, thanks for listening. Adios.